Today's story is all about a notorious Australian bank robber, who seemed to be part action hero, part criminal mastermind. His name is Brenden Abbott. It's the early 1990s in Australia, and a charismatic man with this bad boy aura is making headlines every day. That's right, every single day. He's not just a bank robber. Oh no, he's like the bank robber extraordinaire. Brenden Abbott was known for being both charming and elusive. He had this magnetic personality, which some say he used to his advantage during his bank heists. And guys, this is where the story gets nuts. He didn't just pull off some of the biggest bank robberies. He also managed to escape from not one, but two, of Australia's maximum security prisons. Now, you're probably thinking, how does someone escape from a maximum security prison twice? I mean, these places are like Fort Knox. Well, Brenden Abbott was not your average criminal. He was smart, cunning, and seemed to always be one step ahead of the authorities. And when he escaped, he didn't just lie low. No, he went on a crime spree and stayed in the media spotlight. Which leads me to his nickname. They called him the Postcard Bandit. Now, I know what you're thinking. Did he send postcards while on the run? Was he taunting the police like some kind of criminal globetrotter? But listen, this is where the legend might have gotten just a teensy bit exaggerated. But exaggerated or not, the name stuck, and it became this kind of sensationalized identity. It captured the imagination of the public. A daring criminal, slipping through the fingers of the law, and maybe, just maybe, cheekily sending postcards along the way. Brenden Abbott's audacious escapes and string of bank robberies left the Australian authorities baffled and the public both terrified and intrigued. Melbourne, Australia, 1962. A baby boy is born into a world he didn't choose, a broken home. His name is Brenden James Abbott, and little did anyone know that this child was destined to become one of Australia's most notorious criminals. Now, this isn't your typical troubled youth gone bad story, you guys. No. This has a twist. So Brenden has this childhood that's painted with all shades of sad. A crumbling family, an absence of love, and an ocean of bitterness. As a kid, Brenden channels all this angst into rebellion, and you might think, well, that's not uncommon, right? But wait, there's more. His grades plummet, he's in and out of boys' homes, lands in juvenile detention, and he's running with a bad crowd. Before you know it, he's spinning his web of petty crimes. But here's the kicker, Brenden isn't just another face in the crowd. He's what I like to call the criminal prodigy. This guy has an IQ in the 140s, genius level. Now, imagine that kind of brain power, paired with a deep-rooted rage against the world. It's like giving a match to a pyromaniac. So what happens? Well, his talent for crime doesn't just fizzle out, it blossoms. And not in the way a flower blooms. Oh, no. Brenden graduates from petty thievery to full-blown bank robberies. He becomes the Postcard Bandit, and trust me when I say this, he's not the kind of guy who sends you greetings from the beach. He's different. He's smarter. He's darker. And he is always one step ahead. It's 1987, the city of Perth in Australia is buzzing. The economy is booming, and everyone is minding their own business, just living their life. But little did they know that something big was brewing in the shadows. On May 29th, Brenden Abbott, who already had a reputation as a seasoned criminal, decides that it's time to go big or go home. He teams up with two accomplices and pulls off a bank heist. They escape with more than $100,000. That's like stealing a small fortune. But this high-flying freedom wouldn't last for Abbott. Law enforcement is hot on his trail, and he gets rounded up faster than a kid trying to grab extra candy from a store. Abbott is sentenced to 14 years in jail, but that's not the end of his story. Not by a long shot. 1988, Fremantle Prison, Abbott is at it again. This time, he is the mastermind behind a prison riot. The tension boils over, and the inmates are fighting against the system. It's chaos, and Abbott is at the center of it, like a spider in a web of fury. For this stunt, Abbott is slapped with an additional 4 years to his sentence. But here is where things take a turn for the insane. It's 1989, and Abbott, together with another prisoner named Aaron Reynolds, cooks up an escape plan that you wouldn't believe if it wasn't true. They break through a barred window, and get this, they are dressed in tradesmen's overalls that they stitched together themselves. It's almost like they are in a heist movie, where the thieves disguise themselves to blend in. These two audacious escapees walk across the prison roof, in broad daylight. My mind is racing, and I can almost see them as they make their way across, like they owned the place. They jump a few meters to freedom, and calmly walk away. In the late 1980s, two men were about to go down in Australian crime history. Reynolds and Abbott were not your typical criminals. They were daring, audacious, and to be honest, a little bit showy. So let's set the scene. It's a week after some shady event, and you can feel the tension in the air. Reynolds and Abbott, with the rush of adrenaline fueling them, decide to hold up a TAB, that's a sports betting place, for those who aren't familiar. But oh, they don't just casually rob it, they go in guns blazing. And as they flee the scene, they actually shoot at the police. These guys are not messing around. Now, picture this, they speed off in their stolen getaway car. The police are hot on their trail, but somehow, Reynolds and Abbott manage to slip away. But, guys, it's what the police find later that's truly jaw-dropping. In their abandoned car, the police discover a roll of film. And what they see when that film is developed will go down in infamy. These two bandits, the audacious Reynolds and Abbott, are posing with shotgun shells, counting stacks of money, outside a freaking police station in Western Australia. The audacity, you guys. But oh, this rabbit hole goes even deeper. Fast forward to 1989. Reynolds gets arrested, solo this time. And the police find even more photographs. And these are like the most twisted travel scrapbook you've ever seen. Reynolds and Abbott are pictured in holiday spots all over Australia. Like, these guys are basically on a crime-fueled road trip. But the one that takes the cake, the pièce de résistance, is a photo of them posing with an unsuspecting Japanese tourist at Uluru, the iconic Australian landmark. Can you imagine being that tourist, later realizing you had a happy snap with two of Australia's most notorious criminals? In the 90s, in the sun-kissed land down under, Australia. A country where larger-than-life characters are born, and tales are woven into the fabric of its red, dusty earth. Our story's leading man is Brenden Abbott, the notorious Aussie outlaw. But here's where it gets weird. You see, this is no ordinary bandit, he's a legend in his own right. A man whose name will be whispered with awe, reverence, and a little dash of rebellion. Abbott, in what seemed like the ultimate taunt to the authorities chasing him, was rumored to have sent postcards of himself having an absolute ball. Like, literally. He's there grinning, sun on his face, living his best life, while the police are tearing their hair out trying to catch him. Can you imagine being on the receiving end of that? The audacity. Thanks to some gossip-loving folks who couldn't resist adding spice to an already delectable story, these snapshots turned into a full-blown urban myth. Now get this, they called him the Postcard Bandit. And let me tell you, in a country where tall tales might as well be the national currency, Australia was all in for this narrative. The name stuck like gum on a hot pavement. But here's the kicker, we Aussies have a saying, never ruin a good story by putting too much truth in it. It's the Australian way. The Postcard Bandit, who was one of Australia's most dangerous men, with a rap sheet that would make your grandma clutch her pearls, was now a folk hero. A myth, a legend, an enigma wrapped in a riddle on the loose. Brenden Abbott turned the art of bank robbing upside down, literally. Picture this, it's pitch black, and a mysterious man is prowling around the streets. He's not just any man. This is Abbott, who was at large and in desperate need to fund his life on the lam. He became this, almost, criminal innovator, devising a technique that would be the blueprint for a wave of heists that swept through Australia and maybe even beyond. Abbott decided that the best way to get to the bank's treasures was not through the doors. Instead, he turned into some kind of real-life Catwoman, stealthily slipping into the bank's ceiling during the cloak of night. Imagine him, crawling around up there, laying in wait for hours until the unsuspecting bank staff filed in the next morning. And just as they are going about their day, all of a sudden, like a phantom dropping from the sky, Abbott would, get this, just drop in from the ceiling. Yeah. He would just plunge down and hold the bank staff at gunpoint. The terrified employees, face to face with this man who seemed to materialize out of nowhere, had no choice but to open the vaults and hand over the cold hard cash. And the craziest part is Abbott was like a ghost. He vanished before the police could even blink. Every single time. While he was on the run, Abbott robbed not one, not five, but at least 38 banks, netting an estimated $4 million. This guy turned bank robbing into his full-time job, and let me tell you, he was terrifyingly good at it. It's March 1995. Abbott has been living the high life on the run for 6 years. I mean, can you even imagine? But, you know what they say, all good things must come to an end. And this is where Abbott's cunning streak hits a wall. For a guy who's been so smart, so slippery, this is just, you won't believe it. The cops, they raid his brother's house. And you'd think they'd find Abbott there, but no. They find something way less expected, but just as incriminating. They find a single number, a post office box on the Gold Coast. So, the cops are like, bingo. We've got something. They go to this post office box, and what do they find inside? A bill. Not just any bill, but a bill for a pager. This is 1995, everyone had those little pager things attached to their hips. So, the detectives, they dive into this pager, and they find a bunch of numbers in its memory. They are working overtime, they are connecting dots, and they trace one of those numbers back to an apartment. And guess whose apartment it is? Abbott's girlfriend's place. They swarm the place and there, without even the slightest struggle, they finally catch the elusive Abbott. After 6 whole years on the lam. That's like the least dramatic ending ever. I mean, for someone who evaded capture for so long, to get nabbed because of a pager bill. It's like he was playing the ultimate game of hide and seek, and he got tagged out because he tripped over his own shoelace. So guys, let this be a lesson. No matter how clever you think you are, you can never underestimate the little details. And in Abbott's case, it was a low-tech pager bill that turned out to be his downfall. Queensland, Australia, the mid-90s. Abbott, a self-proclaimed Robin Hood, has just been nabbed for robbing not 1, not 2, but 3 banks, making off with a whopping $1.2 million. Abbott is a self-taught genius in electronics. I mean, the guy could probably build a computer out of paper clips and chewing gum. But, hold on, it gets crazier. During his trial, the court hears that years earlier, while serving time for another crime, Abbott goes all method actor on us. He takes an acting course in prison and becomes obsessed with theatrical makeup and disguises. It's like he's grooming himself to be the ultimate chameleon, Mission Impossible style. The disguises are what keep him a step ahead, slipping through the police's fingers again and again. We're talking close encounters, like the detectives would be right there and Abbott would just blend into the crowd. The court's like, listen up, this guy is Houdini reincarnated, he's got mad skills, and if given a chance, he's going to vanish into thin air, again. Every time he has to appear in court, it's like a scene from an intense Hollywood movie. He's bound in these heavy, clinking manacles, like he's some kind of modern-day Houdini they're expecting to perform an escape act. I mean, this was for good reason. Abbott was so notorious, they kept him in solitary confinement. Imagine, a tiny cell, alone, for an entire year. But here's where the plot thickens. Instead of breaking him, Abbott stays in the highest of spirits. I am talking like, silver lining in every cloud type of attitude. His charm, off the charts. Slowly, the prison guards can't resist his charisma. Abbott, the man they chained like a beast, gets handed the keys to the kingdom, well, sort of. He's given this coveted job. He becomes an education clerk. But hold on, don't go away, because here's where it gets crazy. This position comes with something so much more precious than gold in prison. A telephone. Abbott doesn't miss a beat. He's on that phone, calling up his old pals from the outside. He's like, hey buddy, fancy giving me a lift, if I just happen to jump the wall. Can you believe it? This guy, literally shackled and isolated for being so dangerous, is now plotting his great escape, from right under their noses. It's November 1997, somewhere in a bleak prison, surrounded by cold, hard metal bars. Behind these bars are the kinds of people you hope to never come across in your life. There's Abbott, a man whose crimes are so chilling they'll make your skin crawl. Along with him, there are 3 other murderers and a rapist. These guys, they are the epitome of sinister. And one dark night, they decide they've had enough. They get their hands on something that sounds like it's straight out of a movie. This wire, it's not just any wire. It's delicate, almost as fine as a strand of hair, and it's diamond encrusted. They call it the angel wire. And you're probably wondering, how in the world did they get that inside a prison? I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right? With this angel wire, they saw through the prison bars like they are made of butter. And these guys don't just walk out. No. There are snipers outside, laying down a cover of gunfire, as these inmates bolt for freedom. But freedom isn't so easy to keep. Within days, the authorities round up all of them. All, that is, except for Abbott. He's smart, he's cunning. He breaks away from the group as soon as they are outside those prison walls. Now, Abbott isn't alone in his quest for freedom. He has an accomplice, a young man named Brenden James. He's captivated by Abbott, completely under his spell. They've done time together, and it's almost like Abbott is this twisted mentor figure to him. They move into a house in Carlton, trying to blend in, trying to pretend they are just regular folks. But old habits die hard, right? The police suspect that these two were behind a bold Armaguard truck heist in Dandenong. And get this, they got away with $250,000. It's April 20th. The air is tense. 2 buddies, Bereshon and his young friend, probably thinking they're invincible, are hanging out at Box Hill, a suburb that sits like a puzzle piece in the vast landscape of Melbourne, Australia. They are not just chilling though, no, they are on a mission. And what mission, you might ask? They are trying to score some heroin. But fate has other plans. Because as they are about to get their fix, 2 police officers approach them. The officers, unaware of what's about to unfold, start questioning them. But Bereshon, he's not having it. Suddenly, he pulls out a 9mm automatic pistol. Yes, you heard me right. A 9mm automatic pistol, and the air turns electric. And before anyone can blink, he shoots one of the officers in the hip and the other in the arm. But it doesn't stop there. As chaos erupts and people scream, Bereshon, with the kind of adrenaline you hear about in movies, forces a woman to drive him at gunpoint to Carlton. You might be thinking, what's in Carlton? Oh, you'll see. Because, at this point, Bereshon teams up with a certain Abbott. They are like partners in crime, literally. They hustle to gather their belongings, and it's like they can sense the ticking clock. Because, get this, they manage to flee just 5 minutes before the police storm in. Now, here's where things get crazy. These two, Bereshon and Abbott, are now the subjects of a nationwide manhunt. They are everywhere, on the news, in the papers, on social media. I mean, these guys are infamous overnight. And let me tell you something, police don't like those who shoot their own. It's May 1998, Darwin, Australia. The sun is scorching, and the air is heavy with anticipation. Two criminal masterminds are unwittingly walking into a trap. Now, you would think that Abbott, a notorious bad boy who's always been known to be a few steps ahead of the law, would have used that big brain of his to avoid teaming up with Bereshon again, right? But no. They both find themselves in Darwin. Maybe fate brought them together, or maybe it was just plain bad judgment on Abbott's part. But they are back together and the plot thickens. The staffs at a local Darwin hotel have been doing their homework. They recognize Bereshon from the police circulars that have been making the rounds. The hotel is buzzing. They are like, wait a second, is that the guy? The one the police are after. The staff can't let this go, right? They are straight on the phone to the police. And guys, the police are on it. They send in the big guns, literally. Armed tactical response officers are there, incognito, chilling at the pub inside the hotel. But they are not there for a pint. They are there for Bereshon. They are like hawks waiting for the perfect moment to swoop in without anyone getting hurt. And then, can you believe this? Their jaws drop, the officers can't believe their luck. Out of the same hotel struts none other than Brenden Abbott. The air is thick, adrenaline is pumping, and the officers can't believe that they've hit the criminal jackpot. They have to move fast but carefully. This is Darwin, not the Wild West. They need to make sure no innocent bystander gets caught in the crossfire. In a flurry of motion, the tactical response officers make their move and apprehend both Bereshon and Abbott without a scratch on anyone. So, what started as just another day in Darwin turns into a takedown of two of Australia's notorious criminal masterminds. And Abbott, who should have used his brain and given Bereshon a wide berth, finds himself caught in the most unexpected of ways. It's a crisp evening. The sun is setting, casting long shadows over the quaint suburban streets. Birds are chirping their last songs before nightfall. It seems like a peaceful night, right? Wrong? Brenden Abbott, a man notorious in the land down under as the Postcard Bandit, is on the prowl. And, guys, his nickname isn't just for show. This guy was notorious for sending postcards of his stolen riches to the police. It's almost like he was taunting them. It's the mid-90s, and Abbott is making his way to a local supermarket. His goal? To grab a pizza for dinner. But little does he know that tonight's menu is about to change drastically. Officers have been secretly tailing Abbott. They watch him intently as he strolls down the aisles, completely unaware of what's coming. He reaches for a pizza box. Just as his fingers graze the cardboard. Bam! Officers nab him. There is no dramatic chase, no shots fired, he's apprehended as quietly as the night. And it doesn't end there. His partner in crime, Brenden Bereshon, is also caught. Like Abbott, he doesn't put up a fight. Maybe they knew that their reign was over. Their capture was as silent as their crimes were loud. Now, here's where things take a twist. Abbott, the infamous Postcard Bandit, has swapped postcards of stolen riches for heavily censored postcards that he now sends to his friends from prison. Yeah, you heard me. The tables have turned. He's now in a Queensland prison, serving a jaw-dropping 23 years under the watchful eye of 24-hour electronic supervision. It's almost like the guy can't even breathe without someone knowing. And that's not even the end of it. When he gets out, he might be facing even more time for other armed robberies. As for Brenden, he gets extradited to Melbourne. Remember when I said their crimes were loud? Well, Brenden was involved in the attempted murder of TWO police officers. This landed him a 13-year sentence. This, my friends, is the story of how a night that began with the craving for a slice of pizza ended with a life behind bars. So, the next time you pick up a pizza, just be thankful it's not served with a side of handcuffs. It's June 2019, the courtroom is buzzing, and everyone is anxiously awaiting the decision that could potentially let Abbott, a notorious prisoner, walk free. Abbott's lawyers step forward, and they are pulling out all the stops. They argue that, listen, my guy has been in the clink for 17 years in Queensland, all for crimes he committed before he escaped Fremantle prison back in 1989. But the WA Court of Appeal, they are having none of it. They are like, no way, Jose. This man was not on a prison vacay, he was serving time for some serious stuff. Now, hold on to your true crime-loving hats, because the court brings down the gavel and unanimously rejects Abbott's bid for freedom. The courtroom, silent. The air, thick. The justices said the original sentences were, quote, appropriate. And they are not about to go soft just because of the time he spent in Queensland prison. They also throw in that Abbott, the audacious escape artist himself, went on a crime spree after his prison break. I mean, this guy just doesn't know when to quit. So what's next for Abbott? Mark your calendars, because Abbott will be eligible for parole in Western Australia in July 2026. And his West Australia sentence? Oh, that bad boy doesn't expire until July 2033. But wait, there's more. If Abbott doesn't land himself in any more hot water, he's on parole in Queensland until July 2040. Let that sink in. When he finally wraps up his parole, he'll be 78 years old. For 78, Abbott will have spent almost his entire life entangled in a life of crime and punishment. A story that started in 1989 will come to a close more than half a century later. So, what do you think? Is this a tale of justice served, or a reminder that once you start down the criminal path, turning back isn't so easy?